Welcome to Lesson 87. Today's review brings together two ideas that belong to the same family of thought. Two ideas about will, about light, and about what is actually real in your experience. On the surface, they might seem like separate topics. One is about choosing light over darkness. The other is about recognizing that there is only one will in existence. But as you spend time with them today, you'll see how completely they support each other, how one makes the other possible, and how together they point to a freedom that goes much deeper than the kind we usually think about. This is a review lesson, which means the ideas aren't new. But that's exactly the point. The mind needs repetition, not the numbing repetition of rote recitation, but the kind of return that allows something already known in theory to become genuinely lived. That's what today is for. I will there be light. That's a deceptively simple sentence. Read it quickly, and it sounds almost like a passive observation, like saying, I want there to be light. But the grammar here is important. The Course isn't saying I wish for light or I hope for light. It's saying I will it. There's agency here. There's decision. This is the Course asking you to claim something you already have, the power to choose what guides your perception. The lesson puts it plainly. It is not your will to grope about in darkness, fearful of shadows, afraid of things unseen and unreal. That description of groping in darkness isn't poetic hyperbole. It's a fairly accurate portrait of what ordinary perception feels like from the inside when it's operating without guidance. Anxious, reactive, constantly bracing for threats that may or may not materialize, reading every situation through the filter of past hurt. Light, in the Course's framework, isn't a metaphor for positive thinking. It's the experience of perception corrected, the mind seeing without the overlay of grievance, fear, and projection. When the Course says light shall be my guide today, it means I will let corrected perception lead me, rather than the ego's interpretation of everything I encounter. The instruction for practicing this first idea is active and forward-looking. I will follow it where it leads me, and I will look only on what it shows me. That's a commitment to receptivity. Not to see what I expect to see, or what I fear I'll see, or what confirms the story I've already written, but to look at what light actually reveals. The specific applications offered are worth sitting with one by one. This cannot hide the light I will to see. Whatever is in front of you, a difficult situation, a person who unsettles you, a problem that feels intractable, it cannot block the light you have chosen. The light isn't conditional on circumstances arranging themselves favorably. The will to see it is yours, and it operates independently of what's happening on the surface of events. You stand with me in light. This application is used with a specific person, someone you're finding difficult, perhaps, or someone you care about. When you look at another person through the lens of this idea, you're not seeing them as an isolated ego navigating a threatening world. You're recognizing something shared, that whatever darkness either of you seems to be in, there is a light that includes both of you equally. That perception changes the entire quality of the encounter. In the light, this will look different. This one is honest about the fact that current perception is partial. You're not seeing the full picture yet. The commitment to light isn't a claim that you've already arrived. It's an openness to seeing more than you're currently seeing. The practice rhythm for this first idea is the same as all review lessons. Hourly, you return to the idea and let it apply to whatever is present for you in that moment. The key is bringing it to something specific, a real person, a real situation, an actual concern in your life, rather than keeping it comfortably abstract. Why does the lesson frame this as an act of will rather than a request? Because the Course is very clear that the light is already there. You're not generating it, and you're not waiting for it to appear. The darkness is not the absence of light. It's the active choice to look away from it. And if it's a choice, then the correction is also a choice. This is actually an empowering idea, even though it sounds demanding at first. If darkness is something you've chosen, not as a conscious, deliberate act, but as the accumulated habit of a mind trained to perceive through fear, then you are not helpless. The will that chose darkness is the same will that can choose light, and that will has not been taken from you. The phrase, "I will there be light," is the Course's way of saying, you are not a passive recipient of your experience. The mind that seems to be at the mercy of a frightening world is the same mind that can choose right now to see differently. Light isn't something God withholds until you earn it. It's what's already present when the active choice to see through fear is relinquished. This also explains why the lesson describes the darkness in terms of things unseen and unreal. The fears that drive perception in the dark aren't responding to something actually there. They're projections, shadows cast by a mind that has forgotten its own nature. The light doesn't just change what you see, it reveals that what you were afraid of wasn't there in the first place. Bring this to a concrete moment. Think of one situation in your life right now that feels murky, where you're not sure what's true, or where fear is coloring how you're interpreting things. Apply. In the light, this will look different. Not as a reassurance that it will resolve the way you want, but as a genuine opening. You're acknowledging that what you're currently seeing is filtered perception, not the whole picture, and you're willing, even slightly, to see more. Then try. This cannot hide the light I will to see. Let that phrase meet whatever resistance comes up. Notice whether the mind starts listing reasons why this particular situation really is hopeless. That listing is the darkness insisting on itself. You don't have to argue with it. You just return to the choice, "I will there be light." That return is the practice. Simple, but not always easy. And the repetition throughout the day is exactly what makes it effective over time. There is no will but God's. Now we move to the second review idea, and the shift here is significant. Where the first idea puts the focus on your act of will, choosing light, the second idea opens up a larger question. What is will, and whose actually exists? The lesson begins from a specific psychological observation. I can become afraid only when I believe there is another will. This is worth stopping on. Fear, in the Course's analysis, is not a response to external danger. Fear is what happens when the mind accepts the premise that there is a will in conflict with God's, a will that can oppose, threaten, or overpower what is fundamentally true. The ego's entire operating system runs on this premise. It believes that other wills are real, that they can hurt you, that the world is populated with competing intentions, and that survival requires constant vigilance and defense. And as long as that premise is in place, fear is not just possible, it's inevitable. Because if there really are 1,000 wills out there, all potentially at cross purposes with yours, of course the experience is frightening. The Course's answer to this is not to defend yourself more skillfully or to seek out a will stronger than the threatening ones. The answer is to question the premise entirely. There is no will but God's. Not other wills being overpowered by God's, but no other wills actually existing at all. This changes everything about the fear equation. The lesson continues. I try to attack only when I am afraid, and only when I try to attack can I believe that my eternal safety is threatened. This is a precise description of the ego's cycle. Fear produces attack, and attack, the act of seeing someone as an enemy, of projecting threat onto them, reinforces the belief that the threat is real. Each attack proves to the attacking mind that danger exists, which generates more fear, which produces more attack. The exit from that cycle isn't better conflict management. It's recognizing that the original premise is false. There is no will but God's, and God's will is not threatening. It cannot be at war with your deepest nature because your deepest nature is part of it. The lesson is clear about the conclusion. Today, I will recognize that all this has not occurred. The drama of competing wills, the struggle for safety in a threatening world, the belief that attack is sometimes necessary for self-protection, none of it has actually happened at the level of what's real. It's been an experience, yes, a very compelling one, but an experience generated by a false premise, not by reality. I am safe because there is no will but God's. Safety here isn't contingent on circumstances. It doesn't depend on people behaving well or situations working out favorably. It's a recognition of something that was never actually threatened, because the only will that exists cannot be turned against you. The specific applications carry this into direct encounter. Let me perceive this in accordance with the will of God. Whatever the situation, take the situation you're looking at and ask, what does it look like when seen through the lens of a will that is wholly benevolent, wholly trustworthy, and the only one that actually exists? It is God's will you are His son, name and mine as well. This is applied to a specific person. It's a recognition that whatever role they seem to be playing in your story, difficult person, problem to be managed, source of hurt, their actual identity is untouched by all of that. They remain as God created them. And so do you. This is part of God's will for me, however I may see it. That final phrase, however I may see it, is where the honesty lives. You may not like what's happening. You may not understand it. You may be confused or hurt or frustrated. And still, there is only one will. Still, even this is part of something larger than the ego's interpretation of it. The practice for this second idea follows the same structure. Hourly return to the central thought and apply specific phrases to whatever arises in that hour. The instruction is to bring it into the actual events of your day, real interactions, real challenges, not to keep it at the level of pleasant philosophical agreement. The claim that there is no will but God's can sound at first like it erases individual experience, like it's saying your choices don't matter, or that what happens to you is all predetermined. That's not what the Course means. What it means is more precise: the ego's will, the part of the mind that believes it's separate, that it must compete and defend and secure its own interests at others' expense. That will is not real in the deepest sense. It exists as an experience. It generates suffering. But it doesn't have ontological reality in the way that God's will does. God's will, in the Course's framework, is not an external authority imposing itself on you from outside. It's identical with your deepest nature, what you are before the ego's overlay of fear and separation. When you align with God's will, you're not submitting to something foreign. You're returning to something already true of you. This is also why the lesson says, I am safe. Not, I will be safe if I'm good enough, or I might be safe if things go well, but I am safe. Present tense, unconditional. Because safety isn't a condition the world provides. It's what's already true when the false premise of competing wills is seen through. The two ideas of today's review are now visible as a single movement of thought. I will there be light. I choose corrected perception. There is no will but God's. The very capacity to make that choice rests on something that cannot be threatened. You're safe enough to choose light because the imagined danger that kept you in the dark wasn't real. Take a moment with a situation in your life where you felt afraid, not necessarily dramatically, but that undercurrent of anxiety that accompanies feeling exposed or at risk. It might be a professional situation, a relationship, something about your health or finances, something where the ego's fear logic has been running quietly in the background. Now apply. I can become afraid only when I believe there is another will. Notice whether that reframe shifts something. You've been afraid of a will, a force, an outcome, a person's intention that you've experienced as powerful and potentially threatening. What happens when you bring the genuine question? Is that will actually real in the way I've been treating it? You don't have to answer it definitively right now. The willingness to genuinely ask is already a movement toward the light. Then, I am safe because there is no will but God's. Let that settle into the specific situation you've been holding. Not as a dismissal of the difficulty, but as an anchoring statement beneath it. Whatever is happening on the surface, this is what's true at the foundation. The transition from intellectual agreement to lived recognition comes through exactly this kind of application, bringing the idea to the particular, the real, the present. Abstract ideas about safety don't heal fear, but meeting actual fear with this actual idea repeatedly is how the shift happens. Lesson 87 offers two ideas that, practiced together, create a genuinely stable orientation. Light is available, and it's available because it's chosen, not because circumstances cooperate. And beneath the choice to see clearly is an even more fundamental truth. There is nothing in reality working against you. The darkness is not your enemy. It's the result of a mistaken premise. The fear is not evidence of real danger. It's the natural product of believing in competing wills. And both, the darkness and the fear, yield when met consistently with the clarity of what these two ideas actually say. Today, practice with discipline. Return to the ideas hourly. Apply the specific phrases to what's actually in front of you. Let the ideas meet the real texture of your day, the friction, the uncertainty, the moments of unexpected grace, and see what begins to shift. The light is already willed. The safety is already real. Today is simply about letting that register. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next lesson.